Welcome to Stroke Forward. My name is Marcia Moran. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to talk about things that stroke survivors or any brain injury survivor deals with. If you look at me today, you probably don't see a person who had a stroke, but I feel it. My body functions differently. Do I think I will get back to 100%? Yes, because to think differently is to admit defeat. We will talk to all sorts of people who have been there, from survivors to caretakers to doctors, nurses, therapists, friends, and family who have seen us at our weakest. They have cheered us with their victories, no matter how large or how small. How did we get here? That's what this show is going to tell you. Alison Lichy, PT, PhD, DPT, NCS, is a practicing physical therapist at NeuroPT. She is a board-certified specialist in neurological physical therapy. Currently, Dr. Lichy is a research investigator for the National Capital Spinal Cord Injury Model System, the Rehabilitation Research Training Center, and the Assistive Technology Research Center at the National Rehabilitation Hospital. Her research has been presented at national conferences and is published in peer-reviewed journals. Dr. Lichy consults nationally on the treatment of neurological disorders and is a spokesperson for the American Physical Therapy Association. She is an adjunct faculty member at George Mason University. She is also the former chapter president of the District of Columbia American Physical Therapy Association. I am delighted to introduce Alison Lichy to the show. How are you doing, Alison?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So you are the owner of NeuroPT. What is different about NeuroPT than regular PT? Or is one?
Well, that's a very, very good question. So the staff here, actually we're very lucky here. We've all been working together probably about 20 years. So it's a really, really awesome staff. But NeuroPT, it is a little different than regular PT, right? We just have a ton of experience in the neuro population. We're also neuro board certified, so we actually take a test showing that we have, more experience in that area. We understand the research. We understand, just the disease process of anything neurological, right? So with that, we're, treating people from stroke, right? Spinal cord, MS, ALS, PLS, HSP. You just kind of go down the line. Parkinson's is another very common one that we see. So there's very common ones, and then there's very unique diagnoses, right? And it's just different how the brain or the spinal cord can impact movement. But what's similar about all sorts of diagnoses is that as you've experienced, right, you lose proprioception or understanding where your body is in space, right? And you create compensation patterns. And this is what also often occurs just in chronic orthopedics, right? After you have an injury. So a lot of our neuro patients that come in, it's not just that they've had a stroke or a spinal cord injury or have Parkinson's. They also a lot of times have secondary complications that are orthopedic. Right. So you're really treating the whole body, right? You really can't just look at one area. You have to treat the whole body, top to bottom. And a lot of it, when we look at it, we have a huge background in biomechanics. Mm-hmm. So that is, again, what I teach. Over at George Mason, I used to teach a lot of biomechanics, because it is, when you look at it, the way our body moves, biomechanics, our structural alignment, and then how these other factors fill into it, right? So what is our proprioception of our body and our space? Is our communication to our body, our limbs working the way that we want it to be working? And then we have more experience in just understanding of how that is all connected as one, and how it affects when one area is not working. And then we look to see what we can do to address those issues.
Wow.
apparently you look at us with a whole view rather than a specific view of, oh, we've got to make her shoulder work better or his knee work better. Yeah, okay. Interesting. What made you decide to go into this type of business?
Honestly, it just, I think just these things that just kept happening in my life and opportunities that just came my way. I was working an outpatient at NRH, National Rehab Hospital, and I went inpatient one day to meet with a couple therapists. One of them is Elisa, who I work with. And I remember working with her, and I was just in amazement. Just the way she handled the patients, the responses she got, it was just like she was working magic, right? And so after that, I had worked with, just a couple other therapists here and there just to get more hands on and really understand some different techniques. And I kept falling into people that had experience with neuro. Like they were the best with anybody orthopedic. It was amazing. And so I ended up, they needed some volunteers for a research study to help out conducting. And I got involved with that. And then it just turned out they needed more people doing neuro because, again, it doesn't always seem as fancy and exciting, but I volunteered to do it. And I just kept falling into these people that were just so experienced. And I learned so much very quickly that it just kind of kept me on that path.
Okay. How many places does one find neuro PT? I'm asking because I looked and it seems very hard to find.
It is hard to find. There's not many of us that are board certified, and a lot of therapists that are board certified are in teaching and or research, right?
Mhm.
So again, that has always been our challenge. I think that is very hard. So we see people, I mean, we have people that come probably 40 miles away sometimes,
Mhm.
and so I think that's where how we as a clinic are a little different is that we will evaluate somebody, really see what's kind of missing maybe in their plan with their therapist, and we work with other therapists in the community. So we can help them structure a plan of care or give them some treatment ideas of how to improve what they're doing already, or give the client a home exercise program that can help, that they can add to what they're doing with their therapist. We do this quite often. We do it all over the country. Zoom telemedicine is great now, right? So therapists can be with the client and say, hey, this is how they're walking, and we assess how they're walking, and we say we need to work on this, or this would help. So to give them feedback and ideas and check-ins, it really does seem to help. So it just becomes a little bit of a different way that you view what you're doing. um, and this, we do this with orthopedic patients too. So all the time, and we do videos. So it does work out pretty well. Like you were asking about an example. I just actually, it was a high school soccer player, high level, and he had an ACL tear, and they're like, something is just not right with his gait. And they sent me some videos. I analyzed it with a therapist, and I was like, these are some of the issues, because we do look at the whole body symmetry, the biomechanics of what's going on after an injury.
Yeah. So I noticed that the first time I walked in to your clinic, I walked like I normally did, and I don't really see how I walk and how I'm moving and stuff. What do you look for? Because you saw the things that I didn't even know I had problems with.
um it's kind of funny. You know Explaining it can be hard, I guess, in some ways. But as I would tell my students, right, what a natural gait pattern should look like, right? So when you know normal and really understand what normally is happening, right?
Mhm.
And this is what's great in the students, because most of them are in an age range where, they have a normal gait pattern. So
Mhm.
then when you see something abnormal, it helps you kind of, oh, now I see, wait, something's not happening. And you can compare side to side what should be happening and that's not occurring. I can even hear it. right? You even listen, you look, you listen also to hear how their foot hits the ground.
Mhm.
So there's just so many aspects when you're looking at, what's going on at their pace. Is it, are they taking the same step length? Is it the step width? If they're looking and talking, can they do that when they're walking, right? Or do they have to focus or look at their feet when they're walking? All these things. And also for you, what's your arm doing when you're walking?
Mhm.
Right. So all these things I assess when they walk in the door. I can hear how the door chimes and how it shuts, how they're walking, right? How the door shuts and then how they sit down and the noises people make. Like, is this exhausting or not exhausting? Where are they with, their comfort level in a new environment too? So it's always constantly going through my head how someone's moving.
That's very interesting. Huh. So I find it interesting that no matter how weird the place is that I'm working on, you always find a way to stretch me out. How does that happen?
I think what is really important with us and our clients is the communication too, right? Some people can't communicate, and some people can communicate very, very well. Um, but in this process of our clientele, they tend to really start to understand their bodies,
Mhm.
right? And they start to participate in life again, and where they have trouble with what they're having in life. And that's where we always want to know what kind of things are you having trouble with, right? So I think if you're, oh, I'm having trouble with washing my hair or combing the back of my hair or, you know, getting dressed certain directions or pulling up my pants or putting my shirt on, those things all have different biomechanics and range of motion that you need in your hand, your wrist, your shoulder. All those things go together. So by knowing what function they're trying to achieve and they're having trouble with, that's how we find where they're tight and where they're limited. Because sometimes, maybe you're tight in that area, but it doesn't matter to you because those are not things that you do, right? You don't put your hair in a ponytail or, you're not putting on a bra, right? So maybe you're not reaching in those ways, but some people, they have to reach in those ways. And so that's why it's very important to know what function they're having limitations on.
Interesting. I found that some of your props
Yes.
were very interesting, especially like the long one. It's like a big foam roll
Mm-hmm.
that you lay on.
Yeah.
What do you look for when someone lays on the foam roll? Because the when I bought one way back when, I'm not going to say when, I brought it in the house and my husband goes, "What are you doing with that?" And then when I met you, I brought it out again and it's like, okay, this is funny. So what do you look for when you're having someone lay on a foam roller?
So, what happens, especially, for example, chronic stroke, right? You're
Mhm.
functioning, you're living your day, and this is what comes down to the question in research. Does it matter that you're not symmetrical on each side? And because you're functioning, right?
Mhm.
Problem that starts to happen is that as we function in anybody with an orthopedic problem, if you're asymmetrical or you're compensating, one part of your body is going to become overused than the other, right? But what happens over time is in your brain it tells your body where midline is and it shifts a little bit. So you have this new perception of where your body is, and it might be a little bit too far to one side, or you're leaning, or you're getting a curve and a curve through your spine because you're adjusting to the compensation of the weakness.
Mhm.
So when I get them on the foam roller, because you can cheat so well, right? If I said stand on one leg, you probably could lean your body over, stand on one leg. But the foam roller gives a tactile cue down the spine. So it gives a place for your head to be, gives a firm pressure all the way down the body, and then it wobbles, right? So you're now on an unstable surface, and your body has to um, balance itself. So it kind of forces the body to react. So if you have reactions, which a lot of chronic stroke patients do, then they're going to start reacting in those muscles, the hips, the abs, they're going to start kicking in again, which a lot of times because we're leaning on a cane or we're, furniture walking, right? We don't need to worry about those balance strategies. So it starts to bring in balance strategies again in a way that makes it a little harder for someone that has built a lot of, compensation patterns in to not fall back on those compensation patterns, right? So you're taking something and putting in a little bit more unfamiliar environment so that they can, be challenged and not cheat, compensate.
How long does a treatment last?
So that's the hard part, right? Everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where we try to build this as we're a resource for someone that has a neurological disorder, right? So we do a lot of training and teaching kind of what's going on in your body, right? If it's something that's going to be progressive, how does this usually progress? What are signs that, hey, you need to come back in for therapy? If something's becoming difficult again, or we need to address certain things, when to come back in for therapy, or if something is, something stable as a chronic stroke, right? Where you're either still going through rehab or you're going to be aging, normal aging changes, right? So where do we need to continue with therapy or spread it out? It's really so individualized. It's really kind of based on, what are your goals, right? What do you need to achieve? What are you coming in for? And that's where no one really wants to be stuck going to therapy and saying, no, I'm going to therapy, right? But you want to use this as a resource to say, hey, I have something to work towards and I need to achieve this. And then what can I do? Because I want to get back to living my life and social events or traveling, going to the gym, all of those types of things, and always having that goal of where are we going to. So again, it's very individualized. I think where people tend to stay in therapy a little bit longer is where they need still to regain functional capacity to do their daily activities at home, or to, transfer, to do bed mobility, to walk, where they're still needing assistance and they can't do this independently at home. That's where it varies a lot than someone that is already doing those independent activities and of daily living on their own already.
How do you feel when somebody reaches the results that they're looking for?
Oh my God, it feels so good, right? But I think what's so funny is that, they reach these goals, and some of them are very funny because then once they reach their goals, their next goals are just, they're like, well, what do you mean? Because they'll say, oh yeah, I just went to my daughter's wedding. It was blessed. I danced all night long. I'm like, look, you did it. You did it. And they're like, yeah, but now my wife, we want to go on a trip to Europe and travel, and I need to walk the whole time. So it's really exciting because then their goals just keep going further and further and going back into life, right? So I love it. I love it. And I think it's just always so good. And you're asking about, someone specific I thought about it was really, really nice. I had someone she was a really young mom, and I saw her, a fair amount of time, but you just never know where the impact comes in, right? And her husband stopped by 3 years later, and because, I hadn't heard from her in a while, and he goes, you know what? It changed our life. It saved our marriage. It changed our life. Like, she is living and enjoying life with our family and our kids again. And so that's always that you never know what's going to happen or where it ends, but knowing that she's back to living living life and enjoying it is just the greatest feeling, right? Such a good feeling.
Awesome. The one thing about you or your business is you have Pilates.
Yes.
And you're laughing. That was the hardest thing I have ever tried. The Pilates. You want to tell us a little bit more about it? What do people get when they go to your class?
So we started incorporating Pilates in our clinic, well, like 15 years ago, right? So on a whim, I had a shoulder injury, and my friend was like, "Hey, let's go do this Pilates certification." I was like, "Oh, that sounds great." And it was an ortho specialist PT who had it in their clinic, and I went. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And there's equipment, reformer, and then there's like props, like a ball and a bolster, and TheraBand. So there's a large range of equipment that you can be using, or not using equipment at all. But what I liked about it is that it really gave a way to take someone in rehab, and you can do with resistance or assistance, or use these fun kind of props and springs, and feel good exercising. And then you can take it to the community,
Mm.
right? That was our biggest thing, that we were like, hey, this is how you get someone to rehab, get them into exercise. And a lot of the Pilates principles are very similar to any principle that you would work on in the gym: alignment, core, lengthening, stretching, strengthening, right? It's just good exercise principles that you can do in the gym, and or you can take to a yoga class, a Tai Chi class. There's a lot of principles that merge there, that it's just good education. So if you start it from day one, of your alignment, your posture, your balance, these are the same things that you're going to be working in neuro rehab, orthopedic rehab, working in the gym. It just helps get off the whole I'm stuck in rehab, right? So when you come in, you kind of start with the core, right? So we either start where, alignment, right? So it's a lot of education on alignment.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of it is, how do I even sit at a machine, or do a machine, or lift something, in good posture? So a lot of it is posture, right? And so we all have challenges with posture, sitting at a computer all the time, right? So a lot of these postural issues aren't from having a stroke or having any other type of injury. It's probably been there for a little while. So we start with simple posture, simple balance, but it's hard. It is hard because we try and really push the body, right? So it's constant working, constant assessment, and being, of your body. So it becomes fun. And so what we try and do is we also offer, like you participated in some online courses, so people can just check in, right? So it's also camaraderie, right? I think that's the thing, is that working out can be very boring for a lot of us.
Yep.
So having somewhere where you can be accountable, or meet with a group where it makes it a little bit more fun, and we're all suffering together, right? So it just makes it, you're going to do it. There's a higher chance and probability that you're going to do it, and you're going to be better off, even if you only participate for 30 minutes. That's why I say just show up. Even if you just show up and then just, lay in that child's pose the rest of the session, you're still stretching, you're doing something, right? You're just taking that time for yourself and focusing on yourself, and cutting that time out too, which is super important.
Okay. What is the one thing you would want to tell brain injury survivors or their caregivers?
Oh, one thing.
Could be two.
Um, I think the most, because I teach, I do research, and I'm in the clinic, right? And I think so many times that we get stuck in the research world of, I only have this 1 year to make progress. At the end of this year, I'm never going to get any better.
That's
And right. And I think that's where this is just so hard, when people are coming in for the first time and in such a panic.
right.
And right. And it's so overwhelming because this is new. And they don't have, you don't usually have a lot of friends going through the same thing at the same time, right? So who do you talk to? Who do you turn to? Who do what's next? And I think that's always so hard, is that what's next. And I think sometimes people get really swept up into that, and it becomes emotional and all consuming. And I think just sometimes, you know really think about what you want to achieve, what you want to do, and let us help you get there, right? And create a path to get there. And it's hard work. And I think that's what's always so hard, right? It's hard work for the individual, it's hard work for the caregiver, it's hard work on the family. And just always that communication, I think, is so key on what each person in the family needs.
Mhm.
And having that open dialogue between family members is really, really important because that's going to bring the most success.
Okay. So how do people get in touch with you?
Well, phone, email. Yeah, probably phone and email are the easiest. Neuropt.net. They can call our office. So I think that's always the easiest. Unfortunately, we're so busy, we don't Twitter or blog. um, right. But I mean, I would love to have the time to share all this and talk all the time. But between all the other hats that we wear here,
Yeah.
just give us a call, email us, whatever's easiest.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me, Alison. It's been wonderful.
Marsha, this is really fun. So I'll see you soon.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Stroke Forward Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like it on Facebook, LinkedIn, or anywhere else you heard it. If you want a copy of Just Say Yes to Life, please order it from Amazon.com. The proceeds go to Stroke Awareness Oregon, an amazing nonprofit that educates about stroke causes, prevention, and treatment options. The book, Stroke Forward, is also available on Amazon.com.